Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another week of CSM Live.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us this week as we hit week 3 of our Friends series.
Week three,
Yeah.
Here we go. But yeah, so we're going to talk about a couple things today. And first, we're going to start off by talking about some social norms and what that kind of looks like.
We all know what social norms are, and even though we might not pay attention to social norms all the time, we definitely recognize when they're broken. Mm-hmm. So for me, like one thing is I don't like to be touched. I just do not like to be touched. Like my wife and my son, they're an exception. But if just normal, like just people who I'm not close to, just like are touchy feely and want to like rub my shoulders and stuff, creeps me out.
Yeah.
I don't like being touched.
Yeah, I've definitely got a bubble too. I feel you on that one. But another thing now that we're starting to notice that's kind of a social norm is the masks thing.
Yes,
going on.
The peer pressure for masks.
Yeah.
Strong opinions on both sides. I just recently got back from Kentucky where there was a statewide mandate. Everybody had to wear masks. And if you weren't wearing a mask, depending on where you were in the state, or people walking around enforcing it, you could be shamed for it. So it was a social norm that was basically the mandated social norm that you have to participate in now.
Mm-hmm. And there's another one that I think we can all kind of resonate with, is that if you're out to eat or if you're at a table and somebody is chewing with their mouth open, like you notice like when they're breaking that norm, because like chewing with your mouth open is just gross.
It's gross. And some people just chew so loud. Like, I can't stand it. It sounds like cows chewing cud. I don't like it. Talking in a movie.
It's the worst.
Like you paid for this movie, you want to see this movie, you're likely at a movie because you've been waiting for it to come out. You're there, you paid the ticket, and now people are talking and they're ruining it, or they're texting and the light is like really distracting and you just wish they would be there just to watch the movie.
Yeah, and then finally, like the last one I can really think of that's just like a necessity is if you go to the bathroom, wash your hands.
Yes, wash your hands.
That is
even if we're not in a pandemic, you need to wash your hands. And if you don't wash your hands at home, I mean, nobody's going to know. But when other people are around and you're in a public restroom and you go to the bathroom and then you just walk out, it's gross. Like, I don't want to touch the door handle after you. That's why it really bothers me when places don't have paper towels, and the ones that do have paper towels, when the garbage can's on the other side of the bathroom, so you can't use the paper towel to open the door and throw it away. Oh, that bothers me because that's how I have to open the door. But there's these social norms that we really recognize when they're broken. Like, you don't always recognize them when they're there because people are just naturally basically functioning in society the way that society is normally functioning. But when these norms are broken, you take notice. And what we're going to look at today in Matthew is Jesus violating some social norms in that culture and in that context of the day. Because what was happening was in this culture, your righteousness was believed to be relative to your position in society. If you were on the margins and you were on the fringes, you really were considered to have no righteousness at all. What Jesus is going to do is he's actually going to flip that upside down, and he's going to spend time hanging out with these sinners and these people on the fringe of society.
Absolutely. And, we've talked about already how in our relationships, like, especially in our close friendships, like, are supposed to be founded on, like, Christ and how he is supposed to determine, the way that we interact with everyone. But what we're going to see today as we dig into these verses in Matthew is what about those people who are kind of like on the outside, maybe these people who don't necessarily fit into kind of like our social structure or to where we normally operate.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at that today in Matthew as we discuss this a little bit.
Yeah, and this is one of those kind of tough topics that you talk about. It's like we're not supposed to sin, but we don't need to put up a guard and protect ourselves from sinners, but we do need to guard ourselves from sinning. So it's one of those intricate things that we talk about. When we say Jesus was a friend of sinners, what does that mean? What does it mean that Jesus was a friend of sinners? And what we need to realize is that Christ, when he saved us, he did not save us to separate us and pull us out. What he saved us for, and what he saved us to, is with the intention of demonstrating a Christ-like life to others who do not know him, to also call them into relationship with Christ. He called us, and he uses us to be a demonstration of his love to those around us in the world. And what we see is this passage that we're going to look at today is it is mentioned in 3 of the 4 Gospels. So the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, there are stories that are similar, but from varying perspectives. And the fact that this story is included in all 3 of them means that there's some significance to it, and we should probably pay attention. There's significance to all of Scripture. But when three of the synoptics all include the same thing from a different perspective, we can get a full picture on what is happening. We see this happen in Matthew 9, we see it happen in Mark 2, and in Luke 5. And so what we're going to read today is we're just going to focus on that scripture in Matthew chapter 9, and I'm going to read verses 9 through 13. And it says, "As Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, 'Follow me.' And he rose and followed him. And as Jesus reclined at the table in the house, behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and were reclining with Jesus and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, 'Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?' But when he heard it, he said, 'Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I came not to call the righteous, but sinners.'"
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so this is a great text, and we can really see a lot of things here. And the first thing this text is telling us is that people notice, especially people who are not Christians, can notice there's something different about Christians. Like, so if we look at Matthew in this example, he may have heard of Jesus just because he was performing miracles in the nearby area and before he actually got to where Matthew was, but he did not know Jesus. But what we see is that when offered the opportunity, he got up and he followed Jesus. He left everything he had immediately, and went after Jesus and began to walk with him. Now, if you remember back to week 1, we said that influence is a two-way street. So even though you're capable of being influenced by those around you, you are also equally as capable of influencing those that you're doing community with as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things that we see is that Jesus didn't shy away from sinners. We see in these verses that he called Matthew to him, and then he went and dined with the sinners and the tax collectors, as the Pharisees put it, that Jesus was intentional about spending time with them. He didn't pull away from them. He didn't shy away from them. He didn't avoid them, but he was intentional about spending time with these people who were on the margins of society. And one of the things that we need to realize that the Pharisees in these instances did not comprehend, didn't understand, and really even refused to believe was that we are no less flawed than those who are not in church with us every Sunday. We're no less flawed than those who are that you see in school that have no relationship with Jesus. We're no less flawed than they are and in need of a saving relationship with Jesus. We all need Jesus in our lives, and the fact that we have him, now we are to demonstrate that life and that love that he has given us to others. We are to forgive, as Gage talked last week. We're to forgive, and we're to show the immeasurable grace that we have been shown to others. And there's some things that keep us from doing this. And I think one of the things that really prevents us from doing this is pride, is that we don't want to be identified with certain groups of people. Maybe we're more concerned with popularity, or we're more concerned about the image that we're trying to give out. That's the certain vibe that we want people to have of us, that when Austin comes to mind and people, I want them to have a certain image of me. That when somebody thinks about you and your name, you want them to have a certain image of you. And you don't want that image to be ruined by certain people that you're hanging out with. But we need to focus on loving people more than we focus on being liked. We need to reflect the love of Jesus more than we care about being popular.
Absolutely. And then the really incredible thing is that though Jesus does the work and he actually does the saving, he uses us to actually assist in that process. So we are to be sent out in order that he may save other people.
Yeah, we're privileged to play a part in the work of Jesus. He is going to do what he wants. He is sovereign. He calls people. He draws them in. But we have the opportunity to participate in mission with him.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And if you think about it too, so just like Jesus goes and calls out to Matthew while he's walking on the road and says, "Follow me," there's a point in our lives where he did the exact same thing. There's a point where you were just as lost and you were just as stricken by your sin and as a victim of your sin as Matthew and the rest of the tax collectors and sinners that Jesus was associating with. But the beautiful thing is that Jesus didn't come to save the righteous. If we were righteous, we wouldn't need Jesus at all. So we get to experience his grace and his mercy so that we can then go forth and help him and spread his name. And like Austin said, participate in that saving work of Jesus.
Yeah, when Jesus says he didn't come to save the righteous, it's kind of and insult back at the Pharisees that I didn't come to save the righteous. And he's kind of saying that to them in a way that like, oh, you think you're righteous? Well, then you don't need me anyway. But what he's really saying is there's nobody righteous and everybody needs me. And when he says that, is that there's no one righteous. And then he says, go and learn what this means. He said, I desire mercy and not sacrifice. In Proverbs 21:3, it echoes this. And in Proverbs 23, he says, to do righteous and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. What Jesus is saying here is he doesn't want your religious going through the motions. He cares more about your heart than he cares about your actions. If you don't care about your relationship with him, then whatever you want to bring him in order to try to make up for the relationship that you're refusing to have with him, he doesn't care about it. He desires mercy and not your sacrifice. God transforms your hearts. And as he transforms your heart, we are to outwardly work that inward transformation in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how do we demonstrate this? How do we actually put this into play to where we can apply it to our lives? So first, we should not separate ourselves from those who do not know Jesus, but we should be able to separate ourselves from sinful situations. So like Austin mentioned a little earlier, we should not put ourselves in situations where our reputation or our being as a Christian, our person as a Christian would be tarnished, but we should still be able to live and be in community with people to where they can see Christ living through us. Yeah.
And to echo that, Kevin DeYoung, he wrote this sentence, and I love what he said. He said, Jesus was a friend of sinners, not because he winked at sin, ignored sin, or enjoyed lighthearted revelry with those who engaged in immorality. Jesus was a friend of sinners in that he came to save sinners and was very pleased to welcome sinners who were open to the gospel, sorry for their sins, and on their way to putting their faith in him. Catch this part. Jesus didn't join in sin in order to win over sinners, and neither should we. But he did go out of his way to break social norms in order to meet people where they were. So we need to welcome sinners into our world. We need to welcome people who are far from God into our world and be patient, be loving, be consistent, be persistent in drawing them into a relationship with Jesus as we demonstrate the life of Jesus in us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, guys, and finally, I'll leave you with this last quote from a man named Rod Dempsey, and it says, if we do not allow unbelievers to see our lives, they cannot see Christ's body in action. Invite the lost into your world. Become a friend of sinners. Just the way Jesus was, that's how we should be in pursuing these sinners in order to hopefully win them over one day to Christ. All right, guys, so that is week 3 of our friendship series. Thank you guys so much for joining in. We will see you all very, very soon, and we look forward to it.
Yep. See you guys.